As I've mentioned earlier, session 1 of your MCAS exam, you're not allowed to use a calculator, okay? Unless you have a specific accommodation listed on your IEP or 504 that states that you are allowed to have a calculator on session 1. Okay, so without that accommodation, no calculator is allowed. So what I'm going to do in these next couple problems is show you how you can calculate the answers to some of these problems without having to do too much work. And the key word to these problems is that you'll see the word closest. Okay, this problem down here says best estimate. Okay, so anytime you see those words in a problem, what we can do is we can round the numbers in the problem so that they're a little bit more manageable to use, okay? And when we're rounding, we're going to round to either the nearest 10, 100, or 1,000 because multiplying and dividing with zeros is much easier. Okay, so if we look at this first problem here, we have a librarian purchased books and e-readers for a school library. The school received 11 shipments of books, and the average price of the books was $189.20 for each shipment. The school also received 18 e-readers, and the price for each e-reader was $54.90. So the question is, which of the following is closest to the total amount the librarian spent on both the books and the e-readers? Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to round each of these numbers that I've underlined. So following rules of rounding, 11, I would round to 10. Okay, $189.20, I would round that to $190. 18 readers, I would round to $20. And $54.90, to be as accurate as possible, I would round that to 55. Okay. So to find the total amount of money spent, I'm going to multiply the total number of books times the amount for the amount of the books for each shipment. So I'm going to multiply 10 times 190. Now, when you are multiplying by zeros, all we have to do is multiply the two non-zero numbers. So in this case, I got 19 times 1, so that's 19, obviously. And I have 2 zeros in my answer, so that means I need to add 2 zeros to my answer. So that gives me $1,900. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the readers and the number of readers being 20, and the price of each reader to be $55. So I'm going to do 55 times 20, okay? Now the 0 just becomes part of the answer, and then I'm just going to multiply 2 times 55, or add 55 plus 55, and double it. 5 and 5 is 10, carry the, that's 110. Okay, so now I have $1,900, and if I add that to the $1,100 that the e-readers cost, 9 plus 1 is 10, carry the 1, I get about approximately $3,000. Now, that was much easier to multiply than multiplying 11 shipments times $189.20. Okay, and it was definitely easier to multiply 20 times 55 than it was to multiply $54.90 times 18. Okay, so this is the best way to get an answer when you don't have a calculator, is that we want to round everything to the closest 10, 100, or 1,000 to make the math easier to do without the calculator. Okay, so let's look at our next problem. Okay, so here we have Sylvia is planning to use a 4-year loan to purchase a car. The price of the car is $8,575. Okay, so I would round that to $9,000. Okay, because we're dealing with thousands. And the amount of interest she will have to pay on the loan is $1,036. Well, then I'm going to round that to 1,000 because that's that's the nearest 1,000 it's closest to. Sylvia will combine the price of the car and the amount of interest to determine how much she must repay. Okay, so again, we're combining, so we're adding. So 9,000 plus obviously 1,000 for interest is a total of $10,000. Now she will make 48 equal monthly payments. Which of the following is the best estimate of each monthly payment she will make? Okay, so what we're going to do is take that $10,000 and we need to divide it by 48. Now, probably the easiest way to do this would be to take 48. I'm just going to multiply it by 5 just to see what we get. 5 times 8 is 40, carry the 4. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 4 is 24. Okay, so 48 times 5 is 240. Okay, so let's say, let's do 48 times 4. 4 times 8 is 32, plus 3, that's 192. Okay, it'll make sense in a minute what I'm doing. Okay, 48 times 3, 8 times 3 is 24, plus 2, 12, 13, 14, okay. And then 48 times 2, 2 times 8 is 16, carry the 1, 896. Okay, so now we know what 48 times 2, 3, 4, and 5 are. So when I divide, okay, obviously 48, I can't divide 10 by 48, but I can do 100 divided by 48. And we notice here that 2 times 48 is 96. Okay, and when I subtract that, I'm left with 4. Bring down the 0. Obviously, 48 can't go into 40, so I'm going to put a 0 there. Bring down another 0. And so now I'm looking at 400. So we're looking at so we said 5, 48 times 5 is 240. So obviously it's a higher number. So like, even if it was 9, whatever that might be, it's not going to be above 9. We're still looking at approximately $200 per month. So again, because it said best estimate, we're looking for the answer that comes closest to what we are looking for. Okay, here we have a problem where a candidate received 59% of the votes cast in an election. In the election, 76% of the 39,881 registered voters cast a vote. Which of the following is closest to the total number of people who cast a vote for the candidate in the election? Okay, so there's actually two problems we have to do first, okay? First, we need to find out how many actual voters voted, okay? Because it says the election, 76% of the voters, of the registered voters voted. So we have to find that percentage first. And then from there, we can take 59% of the votes to find out how many votes the candidate received, okay? So now, that 59%, obviously, we're going to round that to 60, okay? 76%, I'm going to round that to 75, and I'm going to show you why in just a minute. And then 39,881, I can round to 40,000. Okay, so first, again, we need to find 75% of 40,000. Now, we know that 75% is the same as 0.75, or as a fraction, it's 3/4. Now, I know many of you are hesitant to use fractions, but let me show you how this can be actually really simple if I use the fraction. So to multiply 40,000 times 3/4, okay, obviously, again, when we're multiplying with zeros, multiply the two non-zero numbers, so 4 times 3 is 12, and then I got 1, 2, 3, I have 4 zeros, so I'm just going to add the 4 zeros onto my answer, okay? 1 times 4 is 4, okay? Again, when we're dividing, same thing occurs. Divide the non-zero number, so 12 divided by 4 is 3, and I have 4 zeros. So this 30,000 represents the number of people who voted. So this is the total votes. Okay, so using that 30,000, I can now find 60% of that 30,000. So I can multiply it by 0.6, okay, which is really 0.60. And 8 times 3 is, 3 times 6 is 18. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros in my answer. Okay, but you'll notice I have 2 decimal places, so that means I need to add a decimal point here. So that means the total number of people who voted for the candidate would be 18,000. And again, for the if you could multiply the 40,000 times 0.75, which would really mean just multiplying 0.75 times 4, and then adding your 4 zeros afterward. Either way, you're still going to end up with that 30,000. I'm hoping that you can see how much easier it is to work with zeros versus just to multiply 39,881 times 76 times 0.76 is just silly. Okay, that's a lot of work there. But when we round, and again, I can round because I have that answer closest. Okay, last problem. Rectangular garden has 16.25 feet wide by 11 3/4 feet long. That's going to be covered with soil. If a bag of soil covers an area of 20 square feet, which of the following is closest to the number of bags of soil needed to cover the garden? All right, so first we need to find the area of the garden. Now 16 1/4, when I round that, I'm going to round that to 16. And 11 3/4, or 11 and 11.75, I would round up to 12. Okay, so already we're getting rid of the fractions to make life easier. Okay, now obviously you probably learned a different way to multiply than I did, but old school tells me to do 6 times 2, which is 12. Add the 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1, and then I add the two numbers together to get 192 square feet. Okay, so that's the size of the garden. But then it's asking us how many bags of soil will we need if each bag is able to cover 20 square feet. Well, already I can see 10. If I do 20 times 10, that's 200, because 2 times 1 is 2, and I have 2 zeros. So that's 200 square feet, and I have 192 square feet. So my answer is going to be D. Anything less than 10 is going to be too small, because 20 times 8 is the same as 2 times 8, which is 16, with a 0. That's 160. That doesn't come close to the total number of square feet that I need to cover. I hope you found this helpful, and obviously if you have any additional questions on how to multiply or divide with zeros, be sure to let me know.